wanting to get into that she would be the person to kind of like go for it. And then
Albright.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you
You can see. I can pass that around. And then Karen Benzicane's another, she's a big flower, all different flower growers, but she has done dahlias in the past. She mainly does seeds now. So that's like what we're going to talk about here, where it's a whole new variety. It's, even though you take it from one plant,
Can you show it on the
it's
screen?
not necessarily going to look like that. It might have some characteristics of that, but
Thank you.
it's own new variety. So last year I decided I wanted to save some of my own seeds, and I just let the plants, let the bees do the work. So at the end of the season, I collected, heads, which, that's kind of a process that I don't know if we'll really go into that because it's a little bit more of a process to things you have to look for when you're collecting those seeds. But I have these, I germinated some in like a 72 cell tray, probably like 24 of them. And the other day I checked on them and I had and this is like almost 2 weeks in, I had 2 that have germinated. So they can be kind of tricky to germinate. So this is another method that you can also do with a wet paper towel. It's sometimes a little bit easier to do it this way because then the seed that you are going to plant is already germinated. So you just want to put it in here. You want to mark, well, if you're getting it from, just a grower, you can put where they came from. But I have like the variety that mine came from, but I don't know both parent plants because the bees did the work. So I just write the date on there, put them in the paper towel. They need heat, but not heat mats might be a little bit extreme. So you can put them on a plate to kind of help with that, but they don't need light to germinate like some seeds do. So just check on them a couple times a day because they can, some can germinate quicker than others. Some might not be pollinated and might, just turn to mush. That's why this way is a little bit easier. So then once they germinate, you'll see the little, sprout coming out, and then you can take and plant that in the soil. So then you're, that, 90% chance that that's going to turn into a little plant. But otherwise, you're doing a lot of work. If you put them in the soil, they get too wet and they rot a lot of times. So, yeah, kind of up to you how you want to go about it. If you want to do the easy way or.
When you put them in the soil, can you describe just what sort of medium you're putting them in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You haven't decided to do that.
I think you can use whatever you prefer. Like if you want to use a regular potting soil, you might want to sift it. If it has like barky pieces and stuff in there, it's going to be a little bit too much to put the seeds in. I mean, of course, there is the more expensive seed starting, but that also you have to think about that has no nutrients in it. So when that plant has used up all the nutrients that was in that seed, it's going to need to be fertilized pretty quickly. But a lot of times you need to dilute that when you're feeding the seedlings because they can be too much for them. So, but any other questions?
What about, because this is all the things I've experienced trying to do seeds, the watering. I have never been successful until I started watering from the bottom on my seed. So would you describe what environment you're using and what watering practices?
I do the tray that I did. I don't bottom water, but I have to check it pretty frequently. I do have heat mats and I have grow lights. I have a dome over it to keep the humidity in. But you don't want them too soggy. That's why they're tricky. If they get too wet, that could be what happened to the other ones that didn't germinate. I don't have one of those soil probes to know exactly what the temperature is, but I just have the basic seedling heat mats, got tons of them. So they all kind of have one under each tray, and then, because I'm not just starting dahlia seeds, I have tons of other things that I'm growing. But, so that, usually they like around 70, 75. It's like they don't want it too hot, so.
How are the seed
But it's hard
flowers different than tubers? I mean,
When you're taking the tuber, you're gonna get the exact same flower. Unless there's some sort of sport that comes off of that plant, you're gonna get the same flower. With the seed, it's all new. And because the genetics of dahlias they have 8 sets of chromosomes, so they, a lot of times revert back to like the smaller Mexican style dahlias that you see that has an open center with 8 petals. So that's why, like, Christine does all the hybridizing with her flowers with a paintbrush, and she's trying to get these fully double, beautiful ones that everyone's kind of looking for. But you can get a surprise. You can get one of those from these seeds that the bees pollinate for you too. So that's kind of what's exciting about it. I mean, of course, I'm not going to fill my whole garden with them, but, trying a few, if you have the space to, maybe you get some surprising new variety that you get to enter into the world of dahlias for everybody. So,
rabbits eat dahlias.
yeah, they can't. I don't really deal with that in my garden, but I know, yeah, lots of people do.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
And for anybody, last year, one of my favorite, probably 3 plants, one of my favorites was ketchup and mustard. Dahlia, very nice red and white, or red and yellow. But one of them, the key when he used the word sport, one of the plants came up with flowers that were totally different. They were still red and yellow, but so anyway, I liked it enough that I dug up that tuber, kept it apart, and started it out. Is that tuber likely to be the same sport that I had last year, or what's likely to happen to the sport tuber?
I think what I've read about the sports is it's almost like you have to take a cutting off of that branch that comes out, and then those tubers will be likely that. But I don't think the tubers necessarily will be, you might get it, but I think that's like the daffodillia I don't know if anybody's heard about that like this woman grew this dahlia last year that looked like a combination of a daffodil and a dahlia. And so it's spectacular, and it has the like little closed type center all around. So she only had a few spores off these certain varieties that did it. So she tried to save seeds from them. She took cuttings from them. She's saving tubers from them. So we don't know yet if they are reproducing or if they're going to be stable so that she can eventually introduce it. So,
Wouldn't that be
yeah, I mean, it's really spectacular. I think her farm has kind of exploded this year because she sells seeds too and tubers and.
It's got a cup.
Yeah, the little
like the
buttercup looking.
Yeah, like the solid piece. If you Google daffodil.
Yeah. So I think that's how it is with the sport,
Yeah.
That was building several years ago, that was, had saved, had guns saved a sport that was good. And, from what I recall, what he said, about 3 years. And then if it continues to go about 3 years, then it's very stable.
Yeah.
And it would keep growing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those, I think Spartacus is a big red one that you get all kinds of sports.
Yeah.
From that. But usually when you say that to you still the same thing you had to start with, it's another sport.
Yeah, I think that's right, that it takes a few years to make sure it's stabilized before, they'll introduce something. Yeah, it's beautiful. Unique.
very unique.
What's the website for that?
What's the name of the
This is like,
I don't know if she has it up there.
I don't know.
Cattle and cut flowers. Yeah, that's it.
What is it?
Cattle and cut flowers. She has, there was actually kind of like a little documentary. I think it was YouTube. Someone did a YouTube interview with her about this particular flower. And,
Yeah, the news channels are covering.
yeah,
it. It's a
there was a big deal about it. So it's pretty neat.
I wonder if her cattle were involved.
Yeah.
That gives a nice, but very long, a fun story.
Any other questions?
How do you keep your seedlings from getting leggy? Did you said you've got them underneath the jump?
Yeah.
Lights. When you plant them out, you just kind of plant them deeper.
No, typically, to keep them from getting leggy, it's like the lights need to be a little bit closer to
You've
the
got a
seedlings
dome
themselves.
And they don't get leggy.
Sometimes I'll cut them back and then that just makes them branch out more. It's like,
Okay.
but typically I don't bury them too deep because sometimes they
Yeah.
can rot in there,
Okay.
the bugs in the stems. So,
I think that's really important. Plant the dahlias too deep,
yeah.
they're very susceptible to rotting.
Yeah. So if you're planting cuttings, it's different. Don't you, the cuttings, you need like leaf nodes to actually get tubers from them?
That's kind of like where the tubers will sprout out from is those, nodes on the side, but
Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't plant it super deep. That's why a lot of times the cuttings, you get this tiny little clump sometimes. Like I last year bought a lot of cuttings for the first time and I just didn't really have great success with getting very many tubers. One of them I had like one tuber and I don't even think it has any eyes on it. So, you know, some of them are very expensive. So I don't think I'll do that
We're
again.
reading a lot about, talk about when you get the cutting, taking off the bottom 2 feet has been very important.
Yeah.
Because that's where the tubers are gonna come from, and that's why people are finding not putting tubers.
Uh-huh.
Just planting it,
Yeah.
and there's no real place for it to produce.
Yeah. It just got the roots sticking at the nutrients, the water roots down.
Jim's kind of the
I
expert on
would
cutting.
recommend, you know, when I take my cuttings, I start them in, when I use the root riots.
Yeah.
But anyway, and they'll root out.
Yeah.
And then I'll plant that in a bigger pot. So when I plant a
Yeah.
cutting, unless it just has to be real late, I need to get it ground. It might end up, 4 or 5 inch pot,
Yeah,
depending on how fast it's growing. I might have to pot it off a couple different times,
okay,
but,
but you're not taking, are you getting good tubers when you're cutting?
I have.
Okay,
Yeah, a lot of times when you're doing cuttings too, it's like you want to, either like take those leaves off. If usually you want like kind of 3 sets of leaves coming out, you want to cut those. Either you can cut them in half because, that's taking a lot for that plant to keep those alive. So if you want to focus on the root production to get it to germinate, off that cutting, yeah, you kind of have to, either peel those off or take some scissors and cut them in half.
Now that's when you actually take the cut, not if you purchase it.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you cut down on these areas.
Do you cut or do you pull?
Both.
Yeah, I was gonna bring, Margie asked me about cuttings and I was gonna bring my stuff, but I was like, I don't have any cuttings right now and I don't have anything to demo, so it's like, yeah, I use like a razor blade and sometimes if you're doing multiple, you want to either sterilize it in between or you want to designate one particular for that tuber. So.
And Jim did an extensive cuttings demo that's on our website, so I didn't have him dive into cuttings this time because just getting different people
Yeah.
involved, but it is on our website and it's close-ups of, he even cuts his down into, and that did a cutting. It was plain. I don't, how did that work? Did it come through? Well, yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad, you have a higher mortality rate when you do it.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
It's a way if you've got really big plants or a thick stem, split it into.
Yeah, so,
You can do that same kind of thing with a tuber also. They're like potatoes, so you've got multiple eyes on one tuber, you can split it in half, make sure you let that cure before you go planting it, because you don't want it to rot, but.
How long does the curing take?
I can't say for sure. You'd have to just kind of, make sure it's dry. Yeah. Because you don't want to leave it out too long with, because you don't want it to shrivel
Like
up. So,
succulents.
yeah, you just gotta keep checking on it, make sure. It doesn't take too long. Like I had some, when I took my tubers out of the refrigerator, that were mushy on the end or something, but the rest of it was okay. So I just like snipped that off. But I had to make sure I let that kind of dry before I wrapped them back up to kind of let them sit out and get warm. So,
Interesting. Like I said, Annette is full of knowledge and experiences
Well, I
and
mean, should each plant, I mean, if you have multiple eyes, then each tuber that you plant, can it just have one eye or two? Should it have two or three things or something?
I mean, they say you want at least one eye.
Well, I.
But if you have multiple, then you'll get more stems coming out. So,
Yeah.
but usually you don't want more than what, 3 stems, is it?
Well, if the actual stems coming out of the tuber, you want to take and clear down to one before you plant it, or as you plant. Notice you don't want multiple eyes coming out.
Right, at the same time.
You want one plant coming up, and then after it gets up and you got 3 or 4 sets of leaves, then top it, so you grow the bush. That's where if you want to experiment with taking cuttings, a lot of times you'll get a tuber and you'll just, put it in supply. If you buy one, put it in, it'll push out 2 or 3 eyes. And you can take one off
Right.
and use it to try to propagate and get
Still
some of
have-
these $25 or $35 tubers, you can multiply them.
Where do you buy most of your tubers?
There's a website called Dahlia Addict. If you're looking for anything specific that you can, search that out and it gives you a whole list of growers that you can, look online to see. I mean, of course, I bought a lot through here initially. I mean, and in the very beginning, which I don't recommend it, I did buy from the big box stores. Those typically come from overseas and they a lot of times have diseases and stuff. So you have to be careful about introducing that to
I'm
your.
afraid that I like do long view or eat for, that fancy.
They're
ones
kind
are
of,
expensive.
Eden Brothers is kind of similar to big box stores. Yeah, because they send you a whole clump.
Yes.
And usually, they're dug up with a machine. They're not dug up by hand like most of these small growers. And so then they're cut up, the necks are broken. It's like you usually don't get something great when you're buying, even though you think, oh, they're sending me 3 clumps, for this price, but then you get them and half of them are no good. So I try and buy from small growers or the Dahlia Society.
Back.
Yeah.
Get some, they're all.
Well, sometimes they're not even what you ordered. They're not the same variety. I don't, and that's from experience, how I have come to know that kind of stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that again because it wasn't successful for me.
With the clump.
Yeah, versus single tuber, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you just need the one.
Yeah.
And big doesn't necessarily, it's not better.
Yeah.
They're all different sizes, They say, what is it, a AA battery? You want your tuber to at least be that size and diameter, but you can have this teeny tiny little thing produce this big giant plant. So it's, they're all individual. Some of them are really long. That's where a lot of times I'll cut those off because it's hard to store those extra long, like Ferncliff, they have a lot of long tubers. So some varieties have long, you'll start noticing if you save them, like, oh, I remember, yeah, these are big round ones. This is small ones. So
When you say local sources, what are those sources?
well, yeah, the Dahlia Society, because the tubers are all donated from us, the members that grew them in our garden. So you also have that as an advantage that it's already been grown in this climate environment, at least one season, maybe multiple, because they're, the same people are donating tubers. each year, I think we get more and more people that start donating them because, nobody can plant all the tubers that they're saving.
So the sale is for owners and then, members, and then it's another sale for everybody?
Well, we open the same sale up. So the first chance for the tubers, and it's almost like the stampede, to get on the website and get the ones you want. But it opens up for members first on the 21st, and then I think 2 or 3 days later. So the members get a password. You have to have your membership paid by April 15th to get that. $5
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's worth it.
to get in early. Okay, and then the tubers will be $7. But you get them ordered, you have to have your part paid for. So you're not reserving that tuber until you pay your order. And we, sometimes if there are very few of a tuber, we prefer you not order 6 of the only 6 we have, or, we may limit your order. So that, once we open to the public, we take the password off, and then the public, it can come on.
So all the ordering is on.
Yes, all the orders are there. Now, at the sale, we have tubers that maybe didn't eye out, the growers weren't, sure it was going to grow. So we have a sale table that extras come to, and so those tubers are also 7, and then we drop them in pods as the afternoon goes on. We'd rather they go to a home. We really don't want to come back from our sale with records.
You got tubers at the sale and pick them up, they'll all have some growth, so you're getting a value.
So you order them online.
No, we pick them up at the DoubleTree, the courtyard at the DoubleTree, Overland Park DoubleTree.
Which that comes out and an email will be sent to you, especially with your order.
Yeah,
You'll get something.
once you order, and if you can't pick them up, you have to make arrangements ahead of time. So that's the process.
I've bought some tubers in the box stores, and probably 25% of those I get by yourself. You just have, the tubers you buy here, you just don't, like someday, you just don't get virus. Because we raise them and, we just raise them. We just bring the best
ones
to the table.
We make sure that there's a viable eye, or that we see growth. And then some of them are potted up as plants. Like Jim brings cuttings, and they're rooted cuttings.
Mike usually
Mike
has a lot of
puts
plants.
his
He
tubers,
starts
and
really
he's going
early.
to talk next, how he handles his. So that's probably a good segue. And Annette, thank you very, very much. Gonna move the camera up so people can see good. You might need to hold it up.
Yeah.
Well, we need to show the close-ups, and we need to get closer. So you look at the screen and make sure.
Oh, that's too close.
Exactly.
Huh? Would be helpful.
So I'm Mike Clemente. I'm going to talk. I've got my tubers here. Everybody can do them a little bit different. And so don't think if I say it one way and then says another. You just kind of experiment, because everybody's yard's so different, the tubers you have, sunlight. So there's a lot of variation in growing dahlias. So, and when I started, I don't know how many years ago, what I found some of the older ones, everybody is very happy to share their knowledge with So don't be afraid, because we all have the same problems. So what I do is I winter my tubers in my pots, different sized pots, depending on what the size of them are. But we'll talk about that as the year goes on. So I'm gonna start as if right now. And we're gonna talk, I think, later in the year in the planting. So what I do is I have my tubers in these pots, and I have it just a little bit moist to get it through the winter. And then once it starts to warm up and I think the eyes are going to be there, I start looking at them. So I'll have this in my pot and I will shake out the soil. I've already done this one time, so my soil is a little bit drier. I've already moistened this.
Is there a bird check out?
No, just be gentle with them because because I've got all these tubers are together here. So I've got to see which ones, not every tuber produces an eye. And you have to have an eye to grow the plant because a tuber may put 1,000 roots out, but if it doesn't have an eye, it's not going to grow a flower.
That's just your tuber straight out of the ground and into a pot at the end of the year.
Right. Well, this one, I've divided this in half because it didn't fit.
Okay.
You know, it's all about your storage space. You could put it in something like this, but I divide mine to fit the pots. Uh-huh.
They can't see what he's doing, so if you can get right on, you might have to stand up.
Then I'll be in the way.
That's okay.
So this is a big tuber here. And are we going to show that one?
Yeah, I want to show the
And
process.
right here is an eye. Right there.
It's growing,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's growing.
Sometimes when it's first.
If it's always a different color than the rest.
It's usually about this color.
But sometimes if it's like,
Screen. Yeah, Mike, get a close up on this screen. Everybody should be able to see the screen. And Mark, you can see
it
it.
might be white, some might be pink.
Yeah,
Well, somebody usually depends on the flower color, stem color.
oh, that's a good.
Sometimes the
Move it up on the screen so it's above just a bit more. Yeah, there you go.
So that's just kind of like a potato.
Yeah.
You know, the eye's coming out. Now, so what you want to do, I've got some that will have more eyes.
Keep it close.
Well, actually-
His hands. These people can't see what's going on.
And right here is another eye. So what you try to do is maximize having an eye come with the tuber. Sometimes you lose it when you cut, but that's just, so this is a nice, really big tuber, but it doesn't matter the size of them, as long as you got the eye, they'll grow. So what I do, these are the 3 things that I usually do to cut through. I have this, which I ordered from Swan Island to cut. Your rose cutter. And don't tell my wife I took one of her nice knives. Which I find very nice. Some people have nice pocket knives, but I really like her knives. So what I need to do now is cut this so that I get, yeah, these are really showing up nice. What I'll do a lot of times is my little spray bottle, I'll spray it to see the eyes.
Yeah.
But now we can really see 2 nice eyes.
What variety is that?
This one is Harvest Moonlight. So now what I'm going to do,
You're gonna cut those ones that don't have an eye on.
well, no, yes, but then I'll put them back in a pot because you'll still get some eyes. And so once I get to, a month, six weeks from now, if there's no eyes on them, I toss
I don't
them.
want to be in the way.
But I'll have 6 weeks from now, you may get an eye coming up on it. So now you just kind of start looking, where can I cut this to get this hole?
To get what?
To get the whole.
the whole.
He's talking
I
about.
probably like that.
like surgery.
Except there's no blood.
So you don't have to reach out. Really your turn. Yeah, so they can see on screen really.
Okay, I got you.
So as you see, I've cut this in the eyes with that one. I'm just gonna say.
Can you point with your.
Okay.
Seeing what you were doing.
So there's the eye. And this has got the tuber, so this is what you'll plant. So now what I'll do, this one's really large. So kind of want to array of pots. Try to put them in the smallest pot that will fit it, because depending on how many you have, if I put them all in this great big pots, I don't have enough room to nurture them through. So I make my own, I have just sphagnum peat moss and I buy perlite, just kind of mix it to the color that I think's good. So then I'll put this in here, fill it up with the soil. And now what I do is I have grow lights. And so this doesn't need to go underneath the grow light, but the warmer it is, the more it's going to grow. So let's say that's been where I store it for a week or two.
Aren't you gonna put more soil on?
Yeah, I'm just imagine. So once the stem starts to pop up, this is the important part. It needs light. Whether you do grow lights or you're putting them outside, bringing them in the evening if it's cold, because if not, you've all grown plants when you were a kid and you had these plants that grew leggy like this, and you don't want that. That also brings up another point. So when you get your tubers out for the first time and you see them, they've grown, I've had them leggy, like this long. You don't want that. You can cut it back close to where it's coming out of the tuber and it will grow natural. So that's a really important thing. Don't let it get leggy on you. Just cut it back and it will grow.
The whole plant. Ruin the whole plant.
Well, just imagine
Yeah.
this has been wintered and I unpack it. And this stem is like
Right.
a foot tall.
Right.
Cut it back, to yay from where it's coming out of the tuber. So once again, I've filled this up. I'm going to let it sit. Once it comes through the ground, I put it under my grow lights. Or if you don't have grow lights, put it in a sunny window. But the important thing, they need light once they get to that point.
How much water do you get?
I like the soil to be about like this. You would rather it be drier than wet because they can rot.
Is it like a spray bottle?
What I'll do is I'll mist them
Yes.
and then I'll kind of look at it and think, well, it's dried out below it, and then I'll add some water to it. So it's just kind of moist enough that it doesn't clump, but it kind of sticks to itself. This is the way I like it.
I have a device that measures the moisture. You get them for $30, put it down there and it tells you whether it's dry or wet or too wet.
Oh, soil.
Yeah, moisture meter.
So
I got mine.
as you can see here, here's another eye. So now I've got two really nice plants coming out of that. And this I'll put into so this one will go into another pot. We've got two flowers. This one I'll put back in the storage, waiting for it to eye up.
Do you aim that sprout up or does it matter?
Well, the
When you
best
put it
that
back
you
in the
want,
pot. Yeah.
especially when you plant them, if you can plant them this way, because then these aren't buried so deep that they can rot. But generally, when I put them in pots, I put them this way because there's not room to lay them flat, unless it's a really small one. So I've got some others.
You better get the seasick.
Always try to keep your
You're doing very
names
good.
with them, because Especially when the sale, oh, I thought I wanted Grand Prix, oh, it's in the harvest midlife. Oh, that reminds me. So there is something called a conductor's pencil. And you can order these online. You can write the name on this.
Surface has to be wet, like he's doing.
Yeah.
Special pencil.
I'm just going to put a mark on it because your magic markers and things, they fade away. But if I'm really ambitious that day, I will mark these. I'm just going to put a couple on there. You can see HA. Yeah. Like I continue that. So that's another way. And this, if you have a conductor's pencil and mark on it, this, I'll dig that up. That'll still be on there. So that's another way to keep track of it.
If you order tubers from Swan Island, the tuber will come with the name of the stamp on it, and they're guaranteed, so
Oh, yeah. One was.
Swan Island.
So this one is called Grand Prix. Once again, I've already looked at this a week or so ago and repotted it. And this, I think somebody brought up a minute ago about if you have multiple eyes on a tuber. Now, this one has 4, and I only have 2 tubers. So actually, here's another one. There's 5.
Oh my gosh.
So there's an eye. How in the world it grew up on the end here, there's an eye. And here's an eye. Now there's a disease, I forget, remember the name of it, Jim, that you'll have like, yeah, gall. You'll have like 20 different eyes come up. And first year I had that, I go, oh my, yeah.
No, that is leafy gall. Crown gall is like tumor.
I thought, oh, that's great. Well, that's a disease. So if you have like 20 different eyes, throw that away.
Immediate.
It looks
Yeah.
like cauliflower.
'Cause so now
We're good.
with this, I can't screw this up too much because there's eyes that's going to go here and there's eyes that are going to go here. So now I'll just cut this. Now I have eyes that went with this one. And eyes that stayed with this. And what Jim was saying about you only want one stem to come up from your tuber. But what I will do is I will plant this way. And I will wait because I'm not always sure which one of these eyes is going to grow nicely. So I'll pot it up, put it here. I'll let the stem come up a little bit like that. And all of a sudden, once I see 2 or 3 growing, I'll go on and cut the ones down I don't think are going to do as well. But that's kind of really important thing is just to have one stem come up. And then it comes up, we'll talk at another meeting about making it more of a bush type
I know the bush is good.
to do that.
At what point do you make that decision and you cut it off as opposed to pulling off the cutting? Because isn't like seeing or when you do cutting, then it ties up all around the cutting? So how do you keep that from happening and cutting down to one, you know?
Well,
And it will sprout a lot of
Yeah.
off of that. Yeah.
So when you cut that from happening, multiplying trials that you're trying to eliminate.
It'll basically give up. But when it's like both of those eyes, where I'm taking cuttings,
Yeah.
okay, if I pull one off, that will stimulate the tuber to create more eyes.
Yeah.
So,
So you're cutting as, you're chopping off as opposed to pulling the whole eye, and so that's gonna keep from just giving you more.
Well, it's gonna do what it wants to do.
That's.
And so, but by repeatedly taking them off,
Okay,
it will stimulate it to a certain point. But once the plant gets going, it'll get, well, not really. It'll, later on, you'll see them, you know, coming out of the ground later in the summer.
okay, so you just kind of keep
But-
doing it until.
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
it gives up, it's just like 10 baby birds.
Yeah.
You only get
But if
two.
you've got 2 or 3 on one, you know, let them all grow up a little bit
okay,
and pick your strongest one.
okay.
Always pick the strongest stem.
And if there's some that aren't really in good position, I've got 2 or 3 here, I may just knock it off right then.
Okay,
It's just kind of, there's no perfect way. You just kind of look at that plant and think, oh, I think those 2 or 3 are going to be the best. You know, you're just playing the odds. That's that.
Always remember, the plant is working for you.
yes.
You control the plant.
Yeah.
If you want to, don't be afraid to prune it. You're doing it a favor.
Yeah,
Create the plant you want.
yeah, no, I'll finish.
So this one is pink bubble gum. And all the dahlias, if they've been gone through the society, will have a number. Like this is 3405. So with that number, are y'all familiar with the dahlias, National Dahlia Society? They will explain this very well. So with this numbering system, you can tell the size of this dahlia, what it's gonna, how big the flower is gonna be. It's gonna tell you the color of the, as well as the shape. So, but you can kind of guess the name a lot of times. Pink bubble gum. So this is going to be a pink one.
And is it going to be a ball?
Pardon?
Probably a ball?
In your
3, 4, yeah, curved cactus.
Oh,
It's a 4.
okay.
So now this one is a real dilemma because you have both eyes are here. And I don't see anything over here. Now, if you're kind of a gambler today, which I'm going to be, I'm going to try to split this right through here. What do you think, Jim? Would you do it that way? Yeah. Now, if this is a $40 one, I probably will, I'm going to play it safe. And even if I knock this off, it's still early in the season, I may get an eye that pops up on this, all the rest of this portion here. So this one, and I found if I steady it somewhere, it doesn't put the stress on it. So there's one tuber with an eye, and here's another tuber with an eye. So what I would do with this one now, it's kind of nice if you're doing this to have an array of different sized pots. So I just kind of size it up. But this one's going to fit in here. So I'll just put a little soil in. Put this, oh, not quite big. So go a little bit bigger.
Do you ever use a root stimulator?
No. Since I just do them all with the soil. Does that show there? Fill it a little bit.
that helpful, you,
No, I'm just,
you're just showing.
I would bring this. So now what I would do, since it actually hadn't started to grow a stem, it's covered up enough and wait for it to grow. Once again, it depends on what you're doing from this stage on. And since I'm putting them under grow lights, you know, if I have them all potted up single and something like this, I can't get a lot of them under my grow lights. Because you know, you're gonna have maybe 50 or 100 plants under your grow lights. But once this grows and starts to get a regular plant, then I'm gonna transplant it to a bigger pot to do there. You just shake it up gently and it's pretty hot. Well, when I put them in the ground is generally you want, for sure, you want to have the last frost
Right.
to be gone. In Kansas City, I think that's May 7th to 12th. Around that time.
On that, so April 20th.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the last frost is in May here. So it's also, it's the soil temperature is important. So it may be May 15 and the sun, and we've had 20 inches of rain, the soil is wet, frost is over, but you don't want to plant them then. So it really varies. So you want to plant them when you think there's no more frost.
So when is your target in March 7th? Not March, but after May.
It's the weather tells me.
I know.
Well, you know,
The
the weather,
earliest will be.
you know, that's, once again, it's, you know, yeah, you can risk it, put some in, but it's what's the soil like, what's the soil temperature, and when do you think the frost is gone? So.
I check my soil temperature with an old thermometer in the kitchen.
But it's usually about the first week in May, if the soil is right temperature.
Want it to at least be 60, is that minimum?
Always until 6.
It's just like tomatoes. There's no advantage putting a tomato in if the frost it's past and it's mid-April. It's just going to sit there. So.
And if you have raised beds, they're going to be warmer. They're going to warm faster than the earth. So there's all sorts of variables. But, yeah.
Like,
But the rule of thumb a lot of the times was money. Yes. Easier to run.
All right.
So how many varieties do you have? How did you start this? Can you just give us a anniversary? We don't know much, like just a little snapshot.
You know, you just start out and you do it. There's no wrong way. It's like, how much time do I have? How much space do I have? You know, I picked
Did you
some.
grow vegetables before other flowers or no?
Well, I have other flowers, but once you get into dahlias, most people find is they just take over your life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big bird.
And maybe not.
And how many varieties?
Well, I have about 50 or 60 varieties now, and I'll put in about 150 dahlias. But depending on how big your yard is, you know, I've got a couple flower beds that are much better than the other flower beds. But I'll put in some in the other flower beds, hoping to get extra tubers so I can have some extras to pass on to other people.
So in my tends to be, well, what I was going to do tends to be full sun. So should I put some netting over it? Do you think, or do these tend to do better in full sun or?
Well, the dahlias like full sun, but they don't like Kansas City full sun.
Yeah.
So if you can have some type of shade, you know, mid to late afternoon, they're going to do best. But yeah, I've been known to stick a umbrella over something if it's getting close to the show and it's, and I need to protect it, but I have to be careful.
Let's get a hurt your plants. Once they get budded out, it might be forming, or especially if the bloomed out. The brighter the bloom are like a really bright red.
Calendar events for the show and everything.
Yeah, if y'all haven't done that, Marjorie's done a wonderful job on her webpage. It's going to have information like what we're talking about today, and it's got all the dates on there too.
It's under the kcdahlia.org and calendar events, and you'll see all our schedule.
But it's, you know, you just plant the dahlias where you think they're going to do the best, and it's a really a learning project. But, you know, we've got experts like Jim here that can give you his experience, but it can change from year to year. Yeah, and then you don't want to put them too close together. You know, generally 2 to 3 feet apart. You know, they look small here. And they'll also, you can generally find, online how wide, some may be a small one, and other ones may need 3 feet apart.
Supposed to have fun doing this.
Yeah.
We talk more about what's going wrong with our dahlias when we come than what's going right. So that means they're fun to grow.
When I get up in the morning, I go, what happened overnight?
Yes, Mark. No, what I'm storing them in is just straight sphagnum moss. And I keep that slightly damp. Because if I kept them this wet all through the winter, would increase the chance of rotting. No, that depends on how my winter schedule is. So I would say at least once a month if you can. But you'll after you store them, you kind of get an idea. Oh, it's about a month. I better go check them. They're a little dry, then I'll mist them. Right. Some people may have, they say 40 degrees is the ideal. My basement never gets below 50. So, right.
Straight sphagnum, you put it in a pot, straight sphagnum, almost looks like you got the herb on the yard.
Well, I wash them.
And then you put it straight into that.
Right. I wash them, let them dry for a day, and then get them in the just straight sphagnum. Then once I'm ready to plant them or pot them up, I'll put sphagnum in, and I'll use the perlite. We've had some past members use vermiculite. I don't like the vermiculite. It's great for doing it, but I don't like it because it's so fine and the dust can really get into your lungs. And I was at the flower store the other day. I hadn't heard of this, that vermiculite actually comes from the same mines that asbestos comes from. So I never heard that, but somebody that was a knowledgeable person. So, but some people do. Bernie used to grow everything vermiculite. One of our retired older senior members, and he had prize-winning dahlias every year. So that kind of brings another point. We may say, one person may say how you do this. It could be different from so many different individuals. So don't fear trying something different.
Don't be some advice and don't step on it.
My thing especially.
And we'll come back at the right side of the rock.
Because we're going to talk about that in the next
Yeah,
meetings about planting.
We're going to have a planting session the next time, and we'll be closer to the sale the next meeting, so yeah, we will go into more depth. And then at the end of the season, we do have, last year it was a tour that Dale coordinated with Ron, and then they showed digging them up. So you'll see the whole life cycle.
But the main thing is you want to have one eye for one tuber. And that's the must. I think there was somebody else had a question.
I'm just gonna say, that was really like,
You're still upright. Yeah. He said you didn't have to grow hair though. Well, my wife she bears with me with much mess I make like this, but the vermiculite, that's hard to work with. But once again, there's a lot of different ways to do these things.
You said something last year that really struck me. You were actually telling somebody else, but it struck me to be so true. That tuber has everything it needs to start a plant. And when you're storing it, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing you're wanting to do is keep it from rotting, which means it doesn't want moisture in the tuber. You just don't want the tuber to dry. If that helps with the moisture content. I mean, it can, and if you've got a big, thick tuber, with lots of moisture in it, yeah, like that one. But if you got a little skinny tuber, might be a little.
And that's a good point. What I've done is when I pulled these out, not all my tubers were like this. I had some that looked like prunes. And if there's any doubt that that thing's not gonna be good, I say just cut it out, is what I go by, because if you save one that's got a weak, how this was attached, and it's a weak neck, they're gonna die. Or if it's pruny, it's gonna die, and what happens, it rots, and it goes up and rots the rest of it.
Yeah.
So. Thanks, Jim.
Have you ever, used humidity at the end of the season for your tubers? I did this last year for the first time because when I've dug mine up in the past, even if I only leave them out for a day, it seems like they start to get soft. And so I know like when you do potatoes or sweet potatoes, like you need the right humidity and warmth. So I put them in trays in my bathtub, and then I just had a humidifier going in that room. And I couldn't believe all the tubers this year were completely firm when I put them in storage. So that might be, yeah, because I didn't even wash them this year. I just dusted them on because I got them out so late. I'd already put my hose away. So I just brushed them with like a paintbrush and then put them in the tub, and then my tub is really deep, but, yeah, just the humidifier in the room. I don't know, kept them from shriveling and getting soft. And so it was like something new I learned this past season because I just dealt with so much of shriveling. Now I have a few that shriveled once they were stored. But the majority of them are still really firm and nice, and so I was really happy with how they overwintered this year.
And I think that's again shows, and I've had that.
Trial and error.
And then the next year, they shrivel on me. So
Yeah.
it's so much, just like farming, it's hard. Every year changes. So that's why you have a few extras and you get rid of them. But I found once I dig them up and wash them off, if I leave them out, they say sometimes leave them out 3 to 5.
Yeah.
I found out if I leave them in our area more than a day, they start to shrivel.
Yeah.
So I get them in fact almost the next day.
Yeah.
But once again, if you're digging up a lot of them, it's hard to do everything as what the book says. But it's just trial and error.
See, that's also like, there's so many different storage methods, like you do the sphagnum moss and I cut mine all up and wrap them in plastic wrap. And then I put them in a designated old refrigerator that I don't use for anything else that's at like 40 degrees. So that's where they stay for the winter. Because again, like everybody's saying, their basements are a little bit in the 50s or higher. And so it's easier for me, space wise to cut them all up, because I couldn't put all these pots in a refrigerator, obviously. So I have to downsize mine. So
Ron is the
figure out what works
scientist.
for you.
The scientist of storage is Ron, I guess.
So-
You want to talk to me?
Just one more point, Marjorie. So when I was talking about the grow lights on the Johnson County Extension Office, how's that listed? I think if you just type that in, Johnson County Extension Office, they have a very nice video of how you build a little, almost like Tinker Toys, to hold your grow lights.
Did that 1 year for us.
Yeah, and actually it's on our,
website too.
so you buy 1-inch PVC, you cut it up, and then it gives you a nice basis to hang your grow lights from. So that's how I do it.
Ron, you want to talk about the setup?
I'll come back, digging and preparing for winter.
Oh, I'm talking about your store, how you have the humidity, just storing your tubers and how you had it, you've got yours so organized, and then you've got the method that you want the temperature humidity.
I have one room in my basement that it's a storeroom that I don't need. I get down into the 50s in the winter, which is about where temperature goes down. So I haven't been there. This happens too, but I had 600. Somehow I became the depositor for people. And 300, we have no idea what they are, but I have to buy them too. We'll get into somebody or something and plan it. But I did mine in the fall, and immediately wash them off. And I always, and Doug always thinks think that I say this, I always put them in Walmart bags. He asked me why I don't use Target. Target's kind of. But anyway, put peat moss in the bag, put the tubers in the bag, and store the bag, and it all go on. Pull them out of storage. About 3 weeks ago. And I just checked this morning, and I got a few eyes already. I did, this year I had about a dozen of them were at the homes. Just because they look like they're going to fit with everything. We'll see, I'm hoping that as you plant both of them, that you get 4 or 5 eyes and another. We'll see what happens.
When Eden Brothers comes, I get one big one with an eye, and then all the other little ones hang on.
The next.
So
Yeah. I don't know what.
they kind of do that to guarantee that you're gonna get one of those things to grow. But typically, if they come overseas, they want them small, they want them dry, to save on their shipping costs. And typically, a lot of the necks are broken, and when the necks are broken, it's fine. But Ron brought up a thing. Would the membership be okay if we give some of these unidentified tubers as a free tuber? Or put it on the sale table? Usually we just sell classified and maybe some that we identify as not classified, but that's quite a few.
These not charging the tubers. Well, we try to offer them for sale. That it would be identified and they might at least thrown out of them. I can see putting these in bags of 2 and just saying, they can have 1 or 2 of them. Take them home and be bold and see what they turn into.
Yeah, have a surprise.
Have a surprise. Do something.
Yeah, so we'll do that.
Probably 50 or 80 of them. But the market is what it is, big red. The description was in that bag.
But generally, they're gonna be nice tubers. We just sometimes lose the name.
I got my son and gave some this morning, or this afternoon.
So, we've got 2 things to do. We can take a break. We have seeds, so people have brought seeds to swap. I do not want to take mine home. You got to see, yeah, and I have some really nice flowers. Some of them you can't tell what they are, but some of them are last season. But you know, you may get 10 seeds in one grow. That's cool. I will reuse the old seeds within 5 years out. But please take some. Did you have any?
Give me $5 to pay on the list.
Oh, yeah.
And if anybody wants to come up and look at these close up, feel free to do that.
And then we'll start the business meeting right in 2:30. Go ahead.
The dry stuff. Where's the dry count for them?
Margaret turned over the pot. Slip.
That's why I thought this is my work bench.
I think there's a paper towel machine
Sorry
over
about
there.
that, yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Nope. I need some practice.
Yeah, we don't need to do the rest of the meeting.
Right.
Thank you so much. We keep forgetting, screen shows better than. Get a great visual.
Yes. You're on.